There's a specific kind of person who walks into a room and the energy shifts, not because they're the loudest, because they're the most certain. You've probably met one, maybe you've envied one, maybe on your best days you've been one. Jung never wrote about Cleopatra by name, but psychologists who studied his work on archetypes later identified a pattern in her, a pattern so consistent across history that it earned its own name, the Cleopatra Archetype. It's the energy of command, of seduction that isn't about looks, of a woman who negotiated with two empires and lost to neither. But here's what most videos about this archetype won't tell you. The same force that let Cleopatra rule a kingdom is the exact force that, left unchecked, turns a person cold, calculating, and completely alone. This video is about both sides, because you can't safely use one without understanding the other. Cleopatra ruled Egypt for 2 decades, in a world actively built to exclude her. She spoke 9 languages. She outnegotiated Julius Caesar. She built alliances that kept her kingdom independent long after every other Mediterranean power had fallen to Rome. History remembers her for her death. Psychology remembers her for her method. In Jungian terms, an archetype isn't a person. It's a recurring pattern of energy that shows up across cultures, across centuries, in people who've never heard of each other. The Cleopatra archetype is the pattern of the sovereign, the strategist, the one who refuses to ask permission to want what she wants. Like every archetype, it has a light half and a shadow half. Most people only ever meet the shadow in a boss, an ex, sometimes in themselves, without ever recognizing the strength underneath it. Let's start with what this energy looks like when it's working for you. Everyone talks about leadership like it's about managing other people. That's not where this starts. It starts with managing yourself, with refusing to hand your decisions over to whoever's loudest in the room. People carrying strong Cleopatra energy stop organizing their life around one question: what's expected of me? And start asking a much more dangerous one: what do I actually want? That question alone ends careers, relationships, whole identities people built to please someone else. It also tends to be the first honest thing they've asked themselves in years. Cleopatra's reputation outlived her because of beauty. Her survival was built on something else entirely. She read rooms, she read men. She understood that in a political system designed to erase her, charm without strategy was worthless, and strategy without charm was just as fragile. This is the part of the archetype that shows up as thinking 2 moves ahead, not scheming, just refusing to let emotion make decisions that logic should be making. If you've ever watched someone stay eerily calm in a crisis while everyone else panics, you've seen this piece of the pattern in motion. This isn't the courage of jumping without looking. It's the courage of looking very carefully and jumping anyway. Cleopatra allied herself with Julius Caesar, then Mark Antony, each time betting her entire kingdom on a read of the political landscape most of her advisors were too afraid to make. Most people already know the move they need to make. What stops them isn't the unknown. It's the fear of being watched while they try. The question this archetype keeps asking is uncomfortable on purpose. If not now, when exactly? There's a quiet cultural rule that says wanting more, openly, unapologetically, is somehow suspicious, especially if you're a woman. Cleopatra never got the memo. She kept expanding her territory, her alliances, her influence, at an age and in a role where most rulers were simply trying not to lose what they had. The version of this archetype worth cultivating isn't never satisfied. It's grateful for what exists and still building. Those 2 things aren't in conflict. Only shame makes them feel like they are. The famous part, the part everyone assumes is the whole story. Magnetism in this archetype was never really about appearance. Historical accounts describe her voice, her wit, her ability to make whoever she was speaking to feel like the only person in the room. That's presence, not prettiness. And presence isn't limited to romance. It shows up in a founder pitching a room that wasn't planning to say yes, in an idea that gets repeated because it was said with total conviction. People don't remember what was said as often as they remember how certain the person saying it seemed. Here's the part most content about archetypes skips, because it's less flattering. Every archetype is a double-edged tool, and the sharper the edge, the deeper the cut when it turns on you instead of for you. Cleopatra's shadow isn't a separate personality. It's the exact same traits, just missing a brake pedal. The same rationality that makes this archetype effective in a crisis can quietly start running the whole relationship. Feelings get filed as inefficient. Vulnerability starts to look like a liability instead of a connection point. People living too long in this shadow often can't pinpoint when it happened, only that at some point being right started mattering more than being close to anyone. Influence is useful. Needing to win every interaction is something else entirely. In its shadow form, this archetype stops asking what does this situation need, and starts asking how do I stay in control of it, even when control was never actually the problem to solve. That shift is subtle. It rarely feels like a decision. It feels like just how things are done now. There's a version of self-trust that's healthy, and there's a version that stops listening entirely. The shadow side sounds like, I already know how this ends. I don't need the input. I'm the only one who sees this clearly. It's a slow kind of isolation, the kind that doesn't announce itself, because it always sounds like confidence right up until nobody's left in the room to disagree with. This is the sharpest edge of the whole archetype. Charm, disconnected from honesty, stops being charisma and becomes a strategy for getting what you want out of people who don't know they're being managed. The healthy version of this energy makes people want to follow. The shadow version makes people have to. That line is thinner than most people think, and it's usually crossed without anyone deciding to cross it. So, should you actually invite this archetype in? If your pattern has been playing small, over-explaining your decisions, or waiting for someone else's approval before you move, this energy might be exactly the correction you need. If your pattern already leans toward control, distance, or needing to be the one who's right, you don't need more of this archetype. You need its counterweight. Jung's real point was never become this. It was, notice what's already running you and choose consciously instead of by default. Cleopatra's real inheritance isn't a kingdom. It's the idea that the hardest and most valuable thing to govern was never other people. It was always going to be herself. Which side hit closer to home for you right now? The sovereignty or the shadow? Tell me in the comments. And if this kind of pattern recognition is useful to you, subscribe to Archetypes in Action. There's a lot more of this coming.